Despite the fact that I don't like cops, even I have come to the defense of certain cops and how police body cameras will ruin the lives of police officers and the lives of everyone. Cops who beat up, rough up, or even shoot suspects dead are reacting to a situation no differently than those who get into a rage over failing at a video game and end up throwing their controller against the wall and breaking it. Also, police officers who are like that aren't some kind of Nazis who are part of some calculated, organized effort to abuse those they arrest and violate civil rights. What you have instead is a sort of mental illness that can affect anyone, no matter what job they do. Your job could be loading crates of apples into a truck all day, and then you set down the crate, stub your toe, and in rage over that, you start kicking at the crate and smashing the apples. Well, it's the same thing for cops, only instead of apples or video game controllers, the subject of their work are people, criminals. Being a cop has to be so hard, as I imagine it from my perspective. Not only do you have to put on a uniform with a belt that has 30 pounds of gear, but you have to put on a ballistic vest, and it can get hot inside it, especially if you're a fat pig with a big gut. So that can get irritating. It's difficult to get up in the morning. I end up having a very fucked up sleep, where I need to get up to piss 3 times a night. So it leaves me with a feeling of a very incomplete sleep in the morning. Then I need a nap. A cop doesn't have the option of a nap to have the optimal psychological conditions. I have learned that just about any physical discomfort, from thirst to exhaustion to a mild fever from a flu that you don't even know you're having, or maybe a fever from a spider bite, can trigger depression, suicidal ideations, and bipolar disorder, where you go into a rage. Cops are required to work a certain amount of years to get their retirement benefits. So think about it. If you have a spider bite that's giving you a mild fever and depression, would you skip going to work if you've got a family to support? Probably not. You'd probably resolve to bear with it. Just about anyone who works a job has to make that decision and try to rein in their emotions and ignore their discomforts. And that may work to a certain extent until something becomes frustrating during your workday. For instance, I can be sick but still work on making a video, so long as everything goes right. But let's say my computer freezes, and that's a problem, and because I'm in a terrible mood because of sickness, I can't deal with this irritation, so I smash my computer in rage. But otherwise, if everything went smoothly, you would have never seen that side of me. The same thing for a cop who is having a bad day. If he stops a suspect and the suspect cooperates, the job is going smoothly and the cop never snaps. On the other hand, if the suspect starts physically resisting or running away, that makes the cop's job harder, the cop might snap. Just like if I'm in an irritable mood and I'm playing Call of Duty, I get a lobby full of noobs that I trash, and it can actually improve my mood. On the other hand, if I'm getting my ass kicked and my nerves are already frayed, I might smash my controller against the ground. The same exact thing applies to cops who deal with uncooperative criminals. That's why they shoot their entire magazine into a criminal, and that's rage. It's like stomping on your video game controller over and over. And you just keep pulling the trigger over and over. Now, as for the criminals who resist arrest, again, it's the same psychological setup for them. A criminal might run from a cop or fight the cops because he is pissed off at life too, his nerves are irritated, and his day isn't going smoothly because a cop just pulled him over. Another thing that might irritate cops is they took on the job for ideological reasons. They don't just want to enforce the law day to day, but instead they envisioned themselves as crusaders who one day will make such a difference that they defeat crime altogether. Now, after being 15 or 20 years on the force, they realize they made zero difference. That can create a huge sense of failure and thus anger and resentment that can cause you to snap because your ideal isn't fulfilled. It's called taking things personally. We all have things we might take personally that can cause us to snap and become violent when we perceive something being done that, according to an individual's logic, is unjust. If I get tired of seeing security cameras because I believe a world would be a better place without them, and I go and smash a security camera in rage somewhere, I'll probably be charged with vandalism and treated like I'm insane. On the other testicle, if an individual who really despises pedophiles sees an adult raping a child and in rage starts smashing the pedophile's skull, they might be forgiven for that. A cop who is frustrated that after a decade on the job he has failed to put any dent in crime, a dream into which he's emotionally invested, which compelled him to become a cop, probably since childhood, might equally become frustrated and start smashing a suspect's head into the hood of his cop car, or beat the shit out of him like with Rodney King. Just like in video games, if you play just for fun, you won't rage as much. But if you play with a goal to keep a 5 KD in every match, you'll probably rage a whole lot more. Same thing with bad guys who defy cops. They have an ideal too. The ideals of a black criminal might be formed by rhetoric from Black Lives Matter, or by rhetoric of the progressive Democrat politicians who continuously paint the black race as the victim class. A black criminal's ideal in life then becomes about sticking it to the whitey. So when a white cop approaches them, they become enraged and defiant. What I'm saying is the same psychology that drives the cop to beat the shit out of a criminal drives the criminal to beat the shit out of a cop. Another thing is, if a man recognizes he's mentally ill with a lot of pent-up rage, he has two choices in life. He can choose to be a street thug who beats the shit out of innocent people, or he can choose to be a cop, where he can let off his steam on criminals. Let's say he chooses to be a cop because he figures he can channel his rage toward something that's beneficial to society rather than something that harms society. So he becomes a cop as an outlet for that. This way, he's roughing up bad guys rather than roughing up innocent people. Now, if you make every cop wear a body camera, where there will be evidence of the slightest slip-up, I guess guys who chose to be cops so they can channel their violence toward criminals now have that option closed off to them. So I guess they could become street thugs instead. Not everything cops do is about being an asshole Nazi thug. A lot of times they have the same exact emotions that manifest in average people. It's just we turn our rage against objects instead of people, because objects like the gaming controller instead of human criminals, because the gaming controller is what upsets us. For instance, why did the cops beat the shit out of Kelly Thomas? And why did they start giving him conflicting instructions to try and frustrate him? Well, because Kelly Thomas was a schizophrenic, and intellectually that made him inferior to an average person. Dealing with entities that are intellectually inferior to yourself can be very frustrating. I've abused my dog on occasions because a dog cannot think and reason like a human and does dumb things. I had to grow up with a mother who was intellectually inferior to me, and so I snapped at her and verbally abused her as a child because it's frustrating.
So if you're a cop and having a bad day and you confront a retard, you might feel compelled in a way that you can't resist to just fuck with the retard's mind. Give the retard conflicting instructions so he gets frustrated, and now you have an excuse to arrest him or beat the shit out of him. Especially dealing with homeless people can be a huge rage trigger in a cop, because homeless people are dirty and gross, and now the cop has to touch them, to arrest them, and have their dirty bodies touch against his uniform. It's disgusting. You wouldn't want to press yourself up against a person who hasn't bathed in 2 weeks and slept in a gutter. Putting up cameras everywhere and trying to record people behaving badly and expose people is a new kind of war. Think of what a failure the war on drugs has been. Well, we're starting to fight a new war, and that's a war on emotions. Cameras are being used to wage a war on an emotion of anger that's older than any drug, and probably as old as the first multicellular organisms on Earth. The only solution is to eradicate this video camera cancel. Remove body cams from police officers. Remove audio recorders. And just go back to having the police be the way they were in the 1980s. If an angry criminal wants to clash with an angry cop, then let them clash and let the chips fall where they may. Make laws against using security video and cell phone video as evidence, and just let things that have always been in the shadows remain in the shadows. In Chicago, crime rates have spiked because cops are afraid to stop and interact with people. They don't want to become the next viral video. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I want more crime because society deserves it, but at the same time, I don't want body cameras on police. But I guess body cameras are responsible now for cops not being as effective at law enforcement.
Most of those black guys who were killed by cops, I bet if you gave them a gun and put an unarmed police officer before them in a dark alley, they probably wouldn't hesitate killing the cop if their positions were reversed. It pisses me off that a cop spraying pepper spray at a bunch of bikers as they were rolling past got busted because one of the bikers had a video camera. None of them knew why they were feeling mild pepper spray effects until one of them reviewed the footage and it showed what the cop was doing. The cop is obviously someone who got annoyed and found a unique way to deal with the problem. If this was the 1980s and there was no video camera, this incident would be nothing more than lore for bikers to share at a biker bar. Yeah, I swear I was riding down the freeway that one time and I swear I saw this cop was shooting pepper spray at us. So why not recreate the freedom from video cameras that we had in the 1980s by making it illegal to use such a footage to punish the cop? Otherwise, what are people supposed to do with their rage? How are they supposed to bottle it up? You can't. Why are people using cameras as a weapon in a war on emotions? So by putting body cams on cops, now guys who want to channel their anger against criminals can no longer become cops. Guys who have personal emotional investment in cleaning up crime can't become cops. Guys who have emotional problems can't become cops, because those are the guys who are likely to snap and rough up the suspects. They can't get away with it anymore because of body cameras. So who is left to become a police officer? Some liberal pussy bitch? Who wants to be a police officer if you have to wear a body cam? Once the ones that are already on the job and have no choice, once they retire, where are you going to find new guys to replace them? I wouldn't want to be a cop because there are too many laws I disagree with, but if I'm not allowed to rough up some bum in a dark alley because of a body camera, why would I want to be a cop at all? And if I became a cop, I'd rather just ignore most of the shit I see on the street just to avoid getting in trouble, so maybe it's a good thing. So what is the plan here? I heard that Obama would like nothing more than to have a new type of federal police in charge. Because Because after regular police forces are so weakened, Obama could go up on his soapbox and say that we need a new type of police force to deal with the crisis. And that's a federal police force that answers directly to the administration. The world isn't going to be a pretty place with cameras spying on everybody.